Welcome to the Art of Growth and our Enneagram panel season on the 9 love languages. This episode is the Enneagram Type 6 panel. If you are enjoying this series and are inspired to pursue more and deeper connections in your life, we've got something awesome coming up. This September starts our next group coaching series on the art of connection. In this 9-week journey, we will guide you collectively to acquire awareness and skills that will enhance connections in your life. Take this opportunity to invest in you, your relationships, and in the community you are a part of. It kicks off the beginning of September, so be sure to go to theartofgrowth.org/group coaching to sign up today before it fills up. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to the Type 6 9 Love Languages podcast. We are diving into this theme on connection, how we connect to one another. And Jim and I had been talking about this for a little bit, that we find that there's this growing sense of loneliness, it feels like, or it seems like, both from the data and also from our just anecdotal, that people are feeling lonely and people don't feel like they're getting that connection even when they're around other people. And for us, it became something really apparent that we didn't even know fully. Like, I know I can speak for myself that how do we connect? And are there practices that we can engage in that help us to connect better, that help us to actually have that moment of feeling seen, known, loved in relationship to one another? And the biggest blocker that we all know that we have is our capacity to really receive love, to take it in. And so we thought we'd explore by type. What are the ways we love? What are the ways we block love? Most of the time without awareness of it. And how can we grow in that? And so that's what I want to explore with you, Type 6s, and get into this. So before we do, let's meet you all. So introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Hi, my name is Mary. I am from Rhode Island.
Hi, I'm Kristen and I'm from Charlotte.
And I'm Christy. I'm from the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
All right. Wow. I guess we got all East Coasters here.
All Eastern time zone, at least. I think that's the first.
That's the first time I think ever. Yeah. Welcome again. And I'm super excited to get into this with each of you and really learn. So this for us is very much a learning experiment, an experience. Hopefully we can gather up a little bit more understanding of how that works in the Type 6. So let's begin with the first question, which is, in what ways do you seek love? And don't worry about how is it relevant. Does it work with my Type 6? Just speak for yourself, and then we'll learn all about whether, in what ways the 6 goes about seeking love. So who would like to get us started?
I don't mind starting. I think generally I'm looking for displays of faithfulness and trustworthiness and presence and honest connection. And there are ways that I have learned about myself that I go about that. I want to be deeply understood. It's really important to me that my close circle knows me well and understands me. And I think one of the things that people will see when they are in close relationship with me is this questioning nature, questioning myself, questioning others, questioning our connection. And probably to some people's surprise, that can go deep into the relationship, like deeper than I would like to admit sometimes. I notice about myself that even far into a close relationship, even when trust has been well established, there may be this tendency to cut and run. If something makes me feel unsettled, or if there's something in the relationship that feels, I don't know if I can articulate an example specifically about that, but I know about myself that I scan for signs that you can be trusted. Mm-hmm. So for me, love is really closely intertwined with trust. And there's this question of, can I trust you? Like, does what you say over time match with what you're doing?
Sure.
There's always like a lookout for that. Do you consistently show up for me? Do I feel known and accepted by you? So those are some ways that I am seeking love in relationships, whether they're partners, romantic partners, or deep friendships.
Yeah, Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. That rang true a lot to me. The authenticity, being understood, looking for security, somebody who's going to be there for me time and time again. And as you were kind of talking about that, the idea that if you start to get a sense that they're not authentic or they're not trustworthy or safe, sometimes I find myself wanting to get out before I get hurt. So it's that all in, the all or nothing kind of thing, that I'm all in until I'm not. And then when something comes up, it's like you want to get out almost before you get hurt or before you feel betrayed. Sometimes, I want to make sure that they're going to be there for me, be consistent. But then, some of those blockers is kind of that pushing people away, leaving them before they hurt you kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when I heard you say, what ways am I seeking love? I kind of thought initially about like, how do I put myself out there to kind of be open for love or connection?
Yep.
And I think I very much, I can be very much of an open book. I'm extremely open. Maybe that has to do with I'm social, number one. And I kind of do that as a way to draw people in and get them to trust me. And then that way I can kind of test the waters as to whether I trust them. So it's a little bit of a dance, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the hypocrisy thing really speaks to me. Are people what they say they are? And various things like that. But for me, one of the reasons it was very difficult for me to kind of identify as a 6 is there were parts of me that identified even as a 2, because I thought of myself as always kind of wanting to do for others, but it wasn't really doing for others. It was more like relationship with others, like putting myself out there to kind of be there for other people. So when I go out and seek love, I think that's the way I have historically done it. With my kids, I seek love by being needed by them but not needed by them in practical ways, more needed by them almost like a counselor. I like to be that person in my friendships, in my family, my husband. I like people to count on me. So maybe that's also what I'm looking for in other people. But I know that I bend myself to do that for other people in order to make them love me or need me a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Joel asked about seeking love, and I'm wondering if I heard this right. I heard a lot of responses that had to do with evaluating connection.
Yeah, probably.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, I was going to ask the question about, okay, how do we actually pursue love? Like, what tells you that you're getting love? What's the indication in you that you're like, oh, that's love. That feels like love to me. But yeah, there's evaluation. There's also like a little bit of earning too. I heard in there, like what I do to earn love, which is all fine. This is all great. Like it's like, because that's true to the type, right? Is what the 6, you're going to think of that. And it's not as easy to kind of tune into more of when I'm being loved. What does that feel like?
That's really, really, really hard for me.
Okay.
To feel loved, I think. I don't know really how to access that completely. I can explain it.
Yeah.
I don't feel that very easily. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I put things up so that it doesn't happen.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make people laugh. If I get a compliment, I'll self-deprecate to pull it down. Yeah. I don't know. I get uncomfortable with that.
I think for me, the way I know I'm loved is when I feel supported. It's just so close. It's right there. It's kind of like how a 3 would maybe answer that question. I feel appreciated. I feel like applauded.
How do you feel supported?
See if this answers it for you. It takes time and like repeated showing up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time thing. It's not even a short-term thing. It's over. It just takes me a while. So like Kristen, similarly, except for I don't want people to depend on me necessarily. Like maybe my kids, that would be something different. But I thought I was a 2 at first in typing until I realized I don't want to be the person that's indispensable to others. I don't. That feels like a heavy burden. It feels like a sinking ship. At some point, I'm going to disappoint them, and this is not going to go well because I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think time is a big piece of it. It's not an instantaneous kind of thing. It's continually showing up, continually kind of being there. And I guess part of it is even somebody who's willing to listen to and keep answering my questions and my doubts. In some ways, I'm a counterphobic 6, and so I did not mistype as a 2. Other people who know me thought I was maybe an 8. The people that I did the Enneagram with were a little surprised when 6 was the thing that rang true to me, but it has been the thing that rang true to me. But I think some of that is the kind of proving themselves and proving that they're going to be there for the questioning, because I know I can be a lot in the questioning and the asking and the doubting.
Yeah, I hear that. I think the same thing. The word support is hard for me to define because it's a feeling that I get, I guess, but it's also a consistency. I like people that can make me laugh at myself a little bit without demeaning me. I like for someone to lighten the mood when I'm kind of spiraling, that can pull me down. My husband's good at that, but I like someone to pull me back, to tether. I feel like I like someone to tether me just a little bit, because I can spiral in my head at times with worry and questions. And if someone's strong enough to stay the course while I'm doing that and pull me back, level me without losing patience, and doing it with, again, the humor is, it can help me take myself a little bit less seriously. My worries a little bit less seriously. That makes me feel loved.
Yeah. So I'm hearing present, like you're there and you keep being there. You haven't rejected me. You haven't run from me. You're also there for my crazy thinking that happens, right? The spin, the sort of all kinds of thoughts. And by the way, I include myself as a, head type. But you're there.
It feels rational.
Yeah, it feels very rational.
Yeah,
it's very rational. Yeah. But people that are there for that, like they won't dismiss you. They don't diminish you because of your thoughts. They welcome all that. So I'm hearing those two big components.
And I would add to that, it's not just being there for it, but it's also valuing it. Seeing some value in the things that I point out that may seem a little bit crazy, but there's a lot of thought behind them. So not diminishing my thoughts. I didn't mean like if someone laughs at it, it makes it better. If they laugh at my reaction, but they take me seriously.
But validating it, I think, is an important thing.
And more than just tolerating.
Yeah.
That's true, right? Because tolerating doesn't feel like love. It just can feel like patronizing at times, or just,
And kind of allowing me to have that reaction first before recognizing it. I know there was a time, I don't even remember what the situation was, but I was kind of starting to spin on the situation. And my wife said to me, "Do you think you're spiraling?" And I'm like, "Of course I'm spiraling." And it was like, "But I'm not done yet." Like, you have to give me a minute and let me finish my spiral. Then you can point out how silly I am. And that's okay. And help me talk through it. But to just dismiss it doesn't feel validating. And so then she was like, "Okay, all right. So we're going to listen through this and then kind of get through it." But
I love your self-awareness there. Like that's so helpful when you actually can say that, like, "No, I'm not done," rather than like arguing that that's like completely rational and logical. And No, I love that. Absolutely. And and that makes a lot of sense. So it's like, okay, you're present. You're not running away from me. You're not rejecting me. You're giving me space for my thinking. And you're there. You're not abandoning me there as well. So that feels like support. You're there in my concern, my worry, my thinking. And then in addition to that, you also validate or value my contribution to you, relationally or to the group depends on, again, I think instinctually how you feel value. But that sounds like what we're saying here. Is that a fair description?
Yeah. And I think because my worries or the way that I can spiral, and because of my other various parts of my personality, I want to act like I don't want to be taken too seriously, but that's a mask for underneath. I think I do have thoughts that are important. And I don't want that to be dismissed as too much of neuroses, right? So again, it all comes back to validating, and then also at the same, which is it's a burden to have to validate someone and then also tether them, tell them to that
We're a
everything's
lot.
going to be okay. We're a lot.
We're a lot.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think there's a sense too in that of as I'm working through something and maybe verbalizing all of my thought processes, which I love when friends or partners stay with me in that because that shows a level of support that they can hear all of my thoughts because then if they hear all of my thoughts, they can then support me fully, but ultimately help me come back to myself, help me come back to knowing and trusting my own inner authority. That's super important for me.
Well, that ups the ante, right? So now we're talking about even deeper ways that you can be loved and better ways that you can be loved. Yeah, it's one of the things I've learned, and I learned this not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, was that for the 6, feeling that somebody's with them in their concern is very helpful, very important. To feel alone in the concern, in the worry, is actually just almost as bad as the worry itself, the thing that they're concerned with. And that was a bit of a learning thing for me to understand that that's what's happening and to be there with a 6 inside the space of their concern and worry does feel like love. It does feel like I'm not alone anymore. That's a pretty cool thing. So I love what's coming up here. I'm learning a lot just listening to you, to the 3 of you. It's fantastic. So that's an interesting thing. And I think that there's like more to this even. So I wish we had 2 hours this because there's a type of love that we seek that's more like, here's what scratches the itch. And then there's a love that is like, that actually meets me where I need to be met. Mm-hmm. And I've recognized that in all of us, all 9 types. Like there's ways that this is what I want from my partner. This is what I want. And it's like, well, that may not be actually what I truly need. Sometimes the thing that has made me feel most loved has sometimes been the thing that I didn't think would make me feel like somebody speaking truthfully to me and snapping me out of my crazy and like my self-delusion sometimes. And like, here's really the truth about you. And it's like, wow, that surprisingly did not feel good. And yet I know that I'm loved. Like that was probably the most loving thing, right? So that's a whole other topic. But at very least to kind of like begin to understand the ways 6s seek love. And then how do we even deepen that to where we get, what is my heart really wanting? Do I want my partner to validate all of my thoughts? Yeah, at my lowest, I do. I know I do as a head type. It's like, yeah, I want you to agree with me and I want you to think like me and I want you to think that my thinking is really amazing. But what I actually need is really more so in the heart center. I need to feel like you're with me more so. And if I can relax into that, then that actually starts to meet the deeper need, of feeling known and loved. Anything come up for you as I said that?
I think just recognizing how much thought I put into things sometimes, and it's different because it's not really about love per se, but about work, about being respected and appreciated at work. When I'm a middle school principal, and so when I come up with a solution to something, or when I offer a suggestion for something, and then they ask questions, some of my thought is like, don't you think I've thought of all of those questions? Because we do go through like so many iterations of something. And so when people trust, not that they don't have to question me, but that trust that I'll have an answer to those questions and kind of validate that I have thought through a lot of those things. Sometimes it's just, you've thought about it, and we do so much thinking, and there's just kind of recognizing some of that thinking, and that I work really hard at trying to make it productive thinking. It's a lot of work, but, kind of trying to work on that and recognizing that I have put a lot of thought and energy into it in a positive way.
Yeah.
I totally hear that, Mary, that because I think the way I present myself is with doubt, and I often will ask questions.
Yep.
It may to other people look as though I just kind of came up with an idea willy-nilly off the top of my head. But by the time I come to you and ask your opinion about something, I've usually done a tremendous amount of analysis. I really just need somebody to give me a little bit of support to be confident in myself. And when people question, it can hurt. They don't understand how much time I've put into the decision thus far. Yeah. And I think it's because I present myself as not very confident. So people ask questions. I can totally see that. I don't know how I can put that in like a love relationship, but it's definitely been there. Like I can see that in my relationships with other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it is, I think there's a stepping into, because this very thing happened between my wife and I not long ago, where she was asking questions about things and I'm firing off answers. And she stopped me and said, I'm not asking you because I don't know what to do. I'm asking you because I want you to understand what is going on, what's happening, and just be with me in that space. And I think the deliberate act sometimes for all of us, me included, I don't do this frequently, just to actually become more aware of your own heart needs and be able to vocalize this. Because otherwise what it is it's the heart manifesting through the head center. And I know that for me as a head type, it's constant. It's like, oh, there's a lot of thought coming out of here, but it's because there's something here that I'm seeking. And so, yeah, so I just want to put that out there, see if you resonate with that, like the heart manifesting through the head center. And sometimes like what I need is actually you to be with me because I have some concerns and I have some fears.
I took a listening, like a class for about active listening. And when you were just saying that, I think someone was a really, really astute active listener. It would probably be the absolute perfect way to feel seen, heard, and loved, because it would let me spout the million things that are in my mind with someone that nodded and didn't interject and let me kind of spiral down to the point where I actually ended up making my own decision at the end. I just needed somebody to verbally process with, oftentimes. Yeah.
I resonate with what you're saying about the heart processes coming out through the head, but I wondered if that was, it doesn't sound like it from what you shared, Joel, but I wondered if it was less head types maybe, but specific to my subtype as a self-preservation, because I'm a big heart on the inside. I mean, head on the inside and heart on the outside. So a lot of my show is warmth. So my outward display does feel very heart-centered sometimes. So that's interesting to hear that you're sharing that as well as a 7.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we can be warm. I tend to, particularly in coaching, I have a lot of warmth because I'm touched by other people's stories, other people's pain, other people's struggle. But yeah, the manifestation of the heart tends to be through the head center, oftentimes for head types. So it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of words. It's a lot of wanting you to, I used to love when people tracked with my thinking and stayed with me in that. Yep. And then I felt like, oh, now we're together. Like that felt so aligning.
It feels so relational.
It feels very relational.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'd have heart types who were like, oh, I didn't feel connected. I was just tracking with you to, help you. It's like, well, I'm sorry. I thought we had something,
No?
Like,
okay.
But I think what we're bringing up here, and I love what you're saying, is like if someone could, the active listening thing that you brought up, Kristen, yeah, absolutely. That feels wonderful.
Yeah.
And then there's both There's both like, how can I grow in being more aware of what my heart actually needs and be a bit more direct about that? Otherwise, I'm demanding that people access or love me in a particular way. We'll get to that question, but it's like, so it's both and. It's like we both got to learn, how do I help other people who are in process of trying to be love, making bids for love, and meet them as best as I can, as well as in what ways can we be more aware of our needs and me be a bit more direct and take more agency for that. Awesome. Well, let's talk about the ways we resist love. That's another biggie, right? Like, how do we resist love? Shall I name the ways? Like, where do we begin?
In the very obvious ways, on the very shallow, you can get deeper and deeper into the ways that I might resist love. But my immediate feeling is, I don't know if it's because I have a dose of skepticism or cynicism, maybe even. I'm terrible about accepting a compliment. I get very uncomfortable, and I'll usually make a funny, witty comment to kind of divert away from it. I guess I don't necessarily trust that. You said the word patronizing earlier in the podcast, and that's one feeling. I don't like to be patronized. I can look for it. I think I'm a little sensitive to it, even when it's not meant to be patronizing, or my radar goes up a little bit when somebody's using too many words I'll just think I'm not going to fall for that. And then I'll just pull back and make a joke about it and not accept it on a very shallow level. When you go a little bit deeper, it's probably, how do I resist love on a deeper level would probably be not really understanding or taking a whole lot of time to figure out what my heart needs, spending all my time kind of thinking about things instead of just feeling them. And so I think it just puts a barrier between me and someone else in that capacity.
That's excellent awareness. Because I resonate with that too. It's like, oh yeah, the blockage is the head center. And it's like, oof.
Yeah.
You start out there as vulnerable.
Yeah. I don't think of myself as being cold-hearted, but it's all here. It's all in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, that made a lot of sense. I think one of the things I also do is it kind of goes along with that idea of flattery, or what may feel like false flattery. You know, people say things and it's very easy to dismiss them. I also do some questioning of what people are saying, or maybe misinterpreting of what people are saying. And it's something that I've been working on, is like, what did they actually say? Not what did I hear them say? You know, even little things like, you know, my sister's like, oh, you're a great principal. I'm like, you don't know, you've never seen me principal. Like, what? But that's not really the point. You can't, like, you know, and so it's easy for me to dismiss those kinds of things. And I don't think she's being just flattering to me. She's, you know, she actually knows and loves me very deeply, but it's easy to dismiss that kind of thing. And so we can, rather than just say that, like, she's proud of me for what I am and who I am, and me accepting that, I can dismiss, you're not in school with me. How do you know what I do when I'm principaling? And, you know, that kind of thing. But it's easy to dismiss those things. So I'm trying to take a step back and listen to people's words instead of how I interpret their words.
Man, this is so good. So we've done workshops on trust, and that you just nailed it. That's the head center, is like evaluating things through like knowledge, facts, competency. Like, how do you know? You don't know. You haven't seen me perform. And so it's all filtered that way. And it's moment that there's anything that does not feel like it's meeting that standard in our head center, it's like, that means Zippo. And I can't tell you how many times we do that as head types. It's a constant for us. So, yeah.
And not even for right now in this moment, but like maybe for future, that I will chain that to the next time we're talking. And I will remember that that didn't line up before. And now I'm questioning what you're saying. Like that pattern of questioning will continue if I'm not working on that actively. Like I've noticed that that's an easy pattern for me to develop, is now continuing to question down the line in the future and holding on to that one time in the past that.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was saying. So you're building on that. It's like okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because you're looking for consistency in the support, there's a carryover always from the previous interaction?
Yeah, I've heard it described as chaining, where I'm pulling from a past experience and now I'm assigning value to a current conversation. Or I think of it as labeling, like now I'm labeling, this person's not quite has not been consistent, or what they've said hasn't borne out to be true, or I question their motive. So I'm going to put them in a category of, I don't know about them. That isn't fair, obviously, because then I'm not present with them in whatever's happening right now. I'm still with a past comment that they made that I'm remembering and bringing to the current situation. And another way that I have seen myself resist love is being reactionary in the moment to something that's being said. And I think that that's been just a point of stress in relationships if I'm bringing big reactive energy to something that then later I have a little regret on my explosive energy about something that did not deem that kind of reaction.
I would imagine that's met with confusion.
I guess it depends. I think it depends on their type and wherever they're coming from as well. I think my partner, my husband, is a 1 on the Enneagram. So he's probably looking at it like that was not the appropriate reaction for what's happening.
Yeah, resistance again, the list is infinite, to come up with like how many ways we block love, blocking love by by questioning the motive of the person. It's like you don't actually know. Your value statement or your praise doesn't mean anything to me. Anything else that for you've observed in your own life that's like, this is how I resist it.
Can I add one more thing to that, Joel? Is because the devil's advocate steps right in and says, but you don't know this other thing over here that I know, which cancels out your praise or cancels out your evaluation.
Even about yourself, I would imagine. Like, you don't know all of this about me. And if you did, well, then would you still love me?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say also a way that I might resist love. I don't know that I consciously store things. But when you talk about reaction, Christy, I might react to something that is on the surface. And if you repeated it again, it would make no sense, but it triggered something in me. And I have a stream of consciousness that's almost like a gotcha. Like I have a bunch of information stored as to why I can argue that maybe you didn't really mean it that way, or that really hurt my feeling. And I can go at somebody with a train of thought that if someone's not prepared for that, it can feel like a bombardment, I would imagine, if you're on the receiving end of that. If something hits me or hurts me. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's a looking for the rejection. It's like a preempting that, like, I know it's coming. And so because I'm vigilant and I'm paying attention, if I see that you're inconsistent in your behavior, that there you are, you're revealing your true colors. So
I was waiting for that. I had it stored up.
We can try to manifest the very thing we're afraid of because we're looking for it and we're ready to there it was, and then we knew we were right. We knew we had seen it coming.
Well, there's even a reward system to that because it's like, there it is, right? There's a certain sense of weird sense of like both I'm hurt and I knew it was coming, but because I knew it was coming and I anticipated, I was right. And so the reward is in the I was right.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit of a barrier to receiving love. I think maybe that could be a barrier. But yeah, I mean, I noticed that in myself.
Yeah. So I love how it's expressed to the 6. I mean, it's true that all 9 types have a fear of being rejected at some level. Like rejection is not just a 6 thing or a type 8 thing or a type 4 thing. It's all types fear rejection. But the way the head center and the way the 6 expresses is looking for it is in that I'm looking for that behavior that indicates that you're actually not really safe, that you won't have my back, that you actually don't love me. And so that's the sort of seeking for that. And as you said, Christy, is like you can manifest it. We've heard the saying before, if you poke the bear enough times, it's going to hit you. It's going to swat at you, right? So it's like I'm looking for it. And because of that, sometimes I can manifest it. Yeah. So what are some things, and maybe this would be a good place to pivot into, what are some ways that you then are growing in that way of how can I better receive love in the way that it's communicated? And, so this is like, it's like both in the sense that I'm learning these habits are blocking. And then also there's a particular way people who I love are loving me that may not be the way I would prefer being loved, but I'm learning that is the way they communicate love. And I want my intake, my capacity to receive to be bigger.
Yeah.
All right. So all of that. But begin wherever you'd like.
I think one of the things I'm trying to learn how to do now is to take a step back from my interpretation of a situation and listen to the intent and the actual either words or deeds or actions of a situation and not put my own spin on it. It's starting to kind of listen to how I would flip that, and back to the, getting a compliment, to being able to say thank you instead of immediately twisting it into why that compliment isn't worthy or why you don't know what you're talking about when you say that, but being able to hear the words someone else is saying and to kind of accept them and as intended, not as I'm interpreting them.
Yeah. That's a lot of trust, though, isn't it? Like, I mean,
It is.
Because intention's really a squirrely thing. It's like, do I believe that was your intention? Like, because right now, everything that's my head's telling me is that it wasn't. But you look like you've grown in that way. So talk to me about that, Mary, a little bit more. Is that working for you as a means of getting to trusting the intention of love?
I think some of it is I think the Enneagram has been really helpful in this, is that trying to think about where other people are coming from, what their number is, what they might be trying to tell me. I don't think of the past very much. I know time is one of those weird things, but for sixes, we're in the present and we're looking to the future. So I have a very hard time remembering the times I've been successful or I've done things well. And my wife's a 9. And so if that's a strong suit of hers. She remembers those things. And that is helpful to me. And it's also helpful to me in that, just kind of getting some of that consistency of thought, consistency of behaviors, and consistency of language. That this is something that she said repeatedly. These are things that she shows through action, through word, and then trying to be able to connect to that, because I'm immediately thinking future and what might go wrong or what isn't being said but should be said, as opposed to pulling back and being just in where I am right now and listening to what is actually being said right here in front of me, instead of worrying into the future about it.
It's a huge lesson. I love that. That's very informative to me too, because that makes sense of there's no weight ascribed to that. Like,
Nope.
There's been consistency for the last, however long you've been married. Like, there's been consistency, but no, because I'm present future.
Yep.
That may not be there tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
I'll piggyback on that, because that's one of the things I was thinking, is that when I can recognize that everyone is not perfectly consistent 100% of the time, not even me who wants consistency, and I can let other people off the hook for that, then I can lean into the trust of the relationship that has been built over years, sometimes decades, that when I'm out of touch with that I can lose sight of. I think one thing that helps with that is dropping out of my anxious head into my body center, engaging my heart, and then I'm more balanced to be able to receive that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, heart is very past. So it's wonderful, because you can actually access a little bit more past when you get to the heart center. And, one of the things that we've been learning about sixes is just how they can see what we don't have yet, because it's very future. It's like, no, we don't have the resources we need, right? And then when you go to the past, it's like, but we have, because we've got this built up connection that we've had for a while. We've been in relationship together. Yeah, really good. I love that. Really helpful. Thank you.
So I think the getting into the body is a biggie. Self-pres is my last instinct. It's not something that's supernatural for me. So in 2 ways, taking care of my body is like getting into my body is important. It gets me out of my head. And in one of my many head-centered conversations with my husband about the concept of grace, he picked up on it, even though it was probably very long-winded. And so now we have something where if I do start to question him or maybe go a little too much with my skepticism or my reaction, he'll say, Kristen, I need you to give me some grace. And I mean, he doesn't say it in the midst of a hysterical reaction, but he does know when to say it. It does help me to remember, give him grace. He's not perfect at communicating things exactly the way that I need to hear them at every single moment, but have some trust and some faith in him. To what Mary said, in the moment, I forget about all the past experiences that he's already laid the foundation until I get pulled back to it. So having some little code words that pull me back and say, wait, okay, give him some grace and have a little bit of faith in him. And that helps. That helps a lot.
That's beautiful. So I want to ask you one last question, a very practical one. Do you have a practical example of the way your partner has expressed love to you that isn't the natural way or the way you prefer to be loved? And how did you maybe respond, if you're comfortable saying, how did you respond to that? In what ways are you learning to receive even that act of love?
My husband's a 3. And so his love language that he puts out is probably the one he wants. And it's words of praise, which we've already discussed. I'm not really great at receiving. So I guess I've learned to kind of, not always, but put more trust in him that what he's saying isn't just fluff and it isn't just to make me feel better in the moment. Let me just put it this way. I'm better at that now than I was 25 years ago. And recognizing, I guess, that that's his way of communicating something very important to him and learning how to receive it as though he was doing quality time, which would be my love language, right? So trying to understand that for him to give words of praise is equivalent to me giving quality time has been one way that I process it, makes it feel better.
Very good.
I think I do a lot of earning. I feel like I have to earn love. And so it's always about doing and the next thing I need to do and needing to make the next dinner, have the next thing ready. It's a lot of active doing. And my wife is a 9. And sometimes the act of not doing is a way of experiencing love, is that she doesn't want to be doing things. And I don't have to do anything to earn her love, but just to be with her and to just be relaxed together, whether we're working on a puzzle or watching something silly on TV or just not doing, and I don't have to do anything to earn it, is a newer concept for me that I feel like if I'm not earning, then I'm losing. And I'm actually learning that by not earning, I'm strengthening. And just by doing little things together that are just not about, trying to make everything, that I don't have to go overboard to make everything perfect and do all these things, that sometimes not doing more is still connecting and finding love versus having to do something to earn or lose it if I'm not doing that, if that makes sense.
Well, that's a real exercise in receptivity. The practice of like, all right, I'm not earning this one. I'm receiving love.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah, that's
the tough one.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I believe I mentioned my husband's a 1, and he shows love by doing the right thing by us, by being consistent in his role. However, that's been defined over the years, and we've been married long enough that that's changed and we've evolved as a couple for sure. And I think over time, I wasn't necessarily looking for someone to always need things to be a certain way or need that level of structure, even though I can see now that it's like you said, Joel, it's always both and. So sometimes that was too much for me in the way of like a rigidity, but on other times that structure offered me great support. And if I'm being honest, I relied on it to a great deal. So I can recognize that. But we, over the years, have really come together at our 7 point, and we love to travel together. And I see his way of being in the world and offering that structure as the love which he intends it, even though it wouldn't be out of the gate. Like I'm looking for a more warm, affectionate love, and he's a little cooler and structured. But we've really been able to come together, and I've been able to lean into the security that offers me.
Yeah.
I just thought of one more thing with my husband because he's a 3. He is really, again, this was hard for me to believe, but he is very good at finding the good in me. He's a big cheerleader for me, which again, like I said, I have a hard time with, but seeing that he does that to other people and he means it, seeing him do that to my children, and recognizing that that's something that he brings to the table that I've learned to believe it when he says it. I mean, I've learned to accept it. And that's not something I do to myself naturally. Right. So it fills me up in a way that I can't fill myself. And it feels good. Yeah.
But just this conversation feels good. It just feels good to notice love and to practice receptivity of love and to be able to say, thank you to the different types around us. in the way that they have loved us, to say, thank you for loving me in this way. And the interesting thing is it doesn't always scratch our itch. But yet if we tune in to what happens after we express that and after we do that as an act of faith, like I choose to receive that, something feels warmer. There's a little less of a sense of disconnection and of loneliness, a little bit more of a warmth and a connection. And so I just deeply appreciate the three of you for opening up, for sharing as vulnerably and as insightfully as you have in this podcast. So thank you so much for opening up and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope this work of art helps you grow. Reach out to us at www.theartofgrowth.org to find out about the upcoming group coaching session, to take our free Enneagram or Instincts test, learn about individual and couples coaching, as well as our next round of certification. If you would like to see how our work can improve your corporate culture and team dynamics, email us to set up a free consultation. You can follow us on Instagram at just Art of Growth, and make sure you follow the podcast. And leaving us a review on iTunes really helps people find this work. Until next time, my friends, grace and growth.